In May 1945, one of the most powerful men in Nazi Germany simply vanished. Hans Kammler wasn't a politician or a general in the traditional sense. He was an engineer, the man who built the concentration camps, who ran the W2 rocket program, who knew where every secret of the Reich's wonder weapons was buried. And in the final days of the war, while other Nazi leaders were captured or killed, Kammler disappeared without a trace. For decades, conspiracy theories have consumed historians. Did the Americans extract him for Operation Paperclip? Did he escape to South America? Did he really die in that forest outside Prague? These questions have generated books, documentaries, and endless speculation. But here's the thing. While everyone argues about whether Kammler survived, there's another story that's completely verified. What happened to the family he left behind? And what one of his sons chose to do with his life is more dramatic than any conspiracy theory. The man who knew too much. Hans Kammler wasn't just another SS general. By the end of the war, he had become one of the most indispensable figures in the collapsing Reich, a man who held authority over nearly every secret weapons program Germany possessed. He oversaw the construction of Auschwitz. He ran the underground factories where slave labourers built W2 rockets. He coordinated the production of jet fighters when Hitler still believed in miracle weapons. His signature appeared on blueprints for death camps and rocket facilities alike. When the war ended, Kammler had more secrets in his head than almost anyone alive. The Allies knew exactly who he was. American and British intelligence had his name at the top of their capture lists. And yet, somehow, he slipped through their fingers. Some witnesses claimed he committed suicide near Prague on May 9, 1945. Others swore they saw him alive weeks later. Conflicting stories spread, but nothing could be verified. No body was ever found. No grave was ever located. The official story became convenient. Declaring Kammler dead allowed everyone, the Allies, the German courts, the post-war authorities, to close one more file in a sea of missing names. But newly surfaced intelligence reports have hinted at something darker, that American forces may have detained him in connection with Operation Paperclip, the secret program that brought German scientists to the United States. If you're new here, this channel explores what happened to the families of history's most notorious figures, the stories that got buried when the war ended. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Whether Kammler escaped or died, one fact remained certain. He left behind a wife and children who had to survive in a Germany that was collapsing around them. And what they did next reveals something far more complicated than any spy thriller. The Widow's Gambit. While other Nazi wives fled to Buenos Aires or vanished into false identities, Jutta Kammler did something unexpected. She came back. American troops had overtaken her in Innsbruck while she waited for a husband who never arrived. She had children to feed and a future to secure. But her situation was legally impossible. Hans Kammler was officially a missing war criminal. That status froze everything. No access to assets, no claim to pensions, no ability to move forward with her life. As long as her husband existed in limbo, so did she. Jutta needed him dead, not emotionally, legally, and she moved with remarkable speed to make it happen. On July 9, 1945, just 2 months after the German surrender, Jutta walked into the district court of Berlin-Charlottenburg and filed a petition to have Hans Kammler declared dead. Think about that timing. Allied intelligence was still actively hunting her husband. The Nuremberg trials hadn't even begun. The occupation zones were still being sorted out. And here was the wife of one of the most wanted men in Europe, filing paperwork to close the book on him forever. This wasn't grief. This was strategy. Jutta Kammler understood that the legal machinery could solve problems that the chaos of post-war Germany could not. If she could get a death certificate, she could unlock whatever assets remained. She could claim a widow's status. She could move on with her life while the Allies chased a ghost. But there was a problem. German law required evidence. A death without a body. Jutta's entire case rested on two men, Kurt Preuck, her husband's driver, and Heinz Zeuner, his orderly. On May 8, 1948, Preuck submitted a sworn affidavit to the court. His story was simple and impossible to verify. According to Preuck, he had witnessed Kammler commit suicide with a cyanide capsule on May 9, 1945, in a forest somewhere between Prague and Pilsen. Zeuner corroborated the account. They described the scene. Kammler had ordered them to leave. They had waited. They had found him dead. The body, they claimed, was left behind in the chaos of the German collapse. No grave was marked. No identification was recovered. Just sworn statements submitted to a German court. It worked. On September 7, 1948, the Berlin-Charlottenburg District Court officially declared Hans Kammler dead. The ruling was based entirely on the affidavits. No physical evidence, no confirmation from Allied authorities, no investigation beyond the witness's word. Here's where the story gets uncomfortable. If the conspiracy theorists are right, if the Americans really did extract Kammler for his knowledge of rocket technology, then his own wife just committed legal fraud. She would have filed false death papers to protect herself while abandoning any hope of finding her husband. The convenient death certificate slammed the door on any official investigation. One of history's greatest disappearances became, on paper, completely resolved. Or maybe she genuinely believed the suicide story. Maybe Preuck and Zeuner told her the truth, and she simply acted on it. Either way, the outcome was the same. Jutta Kammler was now officially a widow, free to navigate post-war Germany without the legal burden of a missing war criminal as a husband. But she wasn't navigating it alone. The network that never died. In the 1950s, Jutta Kammler was receiving letters of support from an unlikely source, Princess Ingeborg Alex of Schaumburg-Lippe. The princess had served as an SS Helferin during the war, a female auxiliary in the Nazi apparatus. In private correspondence, she reinforced the suicide story, offering moral support and practical connections. This wasn't random charity. It was part of something much larger. Across Germany, the old networks of the Third Reich had gone underground, but never disappeared. Organisations like Stille Hilfe, Silent Aid, had formed quietly in the late 1940s to support former SS members and their families. Officially, these groups presented themselves as humanitarian organisations helping war prisoners and internees. In practice, they became lifelines for unrepentant Nazis and their widows. The women who ran these networks understood something important. The Nazi social structure had created bonds that didn't dissolve just because Germany lost the war. SS officers had married into certain families, attended certain social events, built certain friendships. When the Third Reich collapsed, those relationships survived. The ideology might be discredited, but the mutual support continued. Jutta Kammler had connections to this world. Whether she was an active participant or simply a beneficiary remains unclear. The records are fragmentary, the correspondence incomplete. But she wasn't struggling alone in the ruins of post-war Germany. She had people looking out for her. And while the mother was stabilising the family through these old networks, something entirely different was happening with the children. The son who chose a different path. Jörg Kammler was born in 1940, the son of a man who would become one of the architects of the Nazi war machine. He grew up in the shadow of a father who disappeared before he was 5 years old, a father whose name would eventually become synonymous with concentration camp construction and the ruthless exploitation of slave labour. What Jörg did with that inheritance is the most dramatic twist in this entire story. He became a Marxist political scientist, a professor at the University of Kassel. He didn't hide from his father's name. He didn't flee to obscurity or change his identity. Instead, he dedicated his entire academic career to studying the German resistance and the crimes of the Nazi era. The son of the man who built the concentration camps spent his life exposing what those camps meant. This wasn't quiet, private atonement conducted behind closed doors. Jörg publicly stated that his father's culpable, exposed function was the compelling motive for his life's work. He named it. He owned it. He made his career a direct, documented response to his father's crimes. Think about what that means. Every lecture Jörg gave, every paper he published, every student he taught, all of it was shaped by the knowledge of what his father had done. He didn't try to rehabilitate Hans Kammler's reputation. He didn't argue that his father was just following orders or that history had judged him too harshly. He took the opposite approach entirely. He made himself into a living rebuke of everything his father represented. The Kammler name became associated with two completely opposite legacies. The father built the infrastructure of the Holocaust. The son spent decades exposing how that infrastructure functioned and what it meant for its victims. The same surname appeared on SS construction orders and on academic studies of Nazi resistance. One man created the machinery of death. The other dedicated his career to ensuring it was never forgotten or excused. Jörg Kammler died in 2018, having spent more than half a century on this work. The ones who disappeared. But Jörg wasn't the only child. Hans and Jutta Kammler had multiple children, at least 4 who survived to adulthood. There was another son, born on December 10th, 1943. 2 daughters, born in 1932 and 1937. We know almost nothing about any of them. They didn't become public academics like Jörg. They didn't write memoirs defending their father or condemning him. They didn't give interviews or participate in historical research. They simply vanished, not into conspiracy theories like their father, but into deliberate, chosen silence. This wasn't the dramatic disappearance of a war criminal fleeing justice. It was something quieter and, in some ways, more complete. These siblings erased themselves from the historical record entirely. Researchers studying the Kammler family can barely confirm basic details about their lives. Birth dates, yes. Marriage records, possibly. But careers, locations, descendants, nothing. Somewhere in Germany, and perhaps beyond, the other Kammler children lived out their lives carrying a name that historians associate with some of the worst crimes of the 20th century. Whatever choices they made, whatever paths they followed, they made sure those stories would never become public. They watched their brother Jörg turn his inheritance into a lifetime of academic work, and they chose the opposite: complete withdrawal, total silence. 3 responses to one unbearable truth. One family. 3 completely different responses to the same unbearable inheritance. The mother used the old networks to survive. She filed legal papers to have her husband declared dead, accepted help from SS support circles, and closed the book on his crimes as quickly as the German courts would allow. Whether she believed the suicide story or simply needed it to be true, she acted with remarkable efficiency to move forward. The son used his career to condemn. Jörg spent decades exposing the regime his father helped build, and he publicly named his guilt as the reason for everything he studied. He took a name associated with concentration camp construction and attached it instead to scholarship about resistance and remembrance. The other children chose erasure. They vanished so completely that historians can barely confirm they existed. No defences, no condemnations, no participation in the endless debates about their father's fate. Just silence, decades of it, maintained until they too were gone. The Kammler mystery isn't really about whether Hans escaped to America or died in that forest outside Prague. Historians may never resolve that question definitively. The documents are incomplete, the witnesses are dead, and the truth whatever it was, disappeared with the chaos of 1945. But the family story is resolved. It's documented. And it reveals something important about how people respond when they inherit the unforgivable. Some protect the legacy because survival requires it. Some destroy it because conscience demands it. Some simply walk away and never look back, choosing a silence so complete that even their existence becomes uncertain. Hans Kammler built the machinery of the Holocaust and then vanished into history's shadows. His family had to live in the light he left behind, and each of them found a different way to carry that weight. Thanks for watching History Hangover. If you found this video insightful, check out our other deep dives into the hidden legacies of World War II. Like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss our next upload.